Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Captain's Table. I'm your host, Captain B-Nard, and topic of discussion today is going to be Loki, a complete review and reaction to the season, as well as speculation moving forward. And here to discuss that with me, returning to the Captain's Table for the sixth time, we have Feltzwild. Welcome back.
Hello.
Yes, yes, hello. So, we're going to do this pretty much the same way that we've did it when talking about the last couple of shows. Of course, WandaVision and Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So we're just going to kind of give a recap of the entire season of Loki now that it's over, and then also react to it. And then we're also going to kind of look forward into the future of Marvel. So kind of business as usual here. Anything you would like to add to that, Feltz?
Nope, I'm
All
good.
right. All right. I actually would like to add one thing, though. I would like to add a special thank you to none other than you, Feltzwild, for designing the brand new Captain's Table, as you can all see on the thumbnail there, for the 40th episode of the Captain's Table. So thank you to that.
You're welcome.
Don't sound too excited there.
You're
It was
welcome.
that was minutes of painstaking labor that you put forth to make that. So,
It was a minute.
I mean, I'm sure it was some,
You're
you know,
nitpicky. It wasn't minutes.
well, yeah, but it might have been a lot of minutes, but it was still minutes. So
Mm,
it might have been like more like 30 minutes, but
yeah.
anyway. So um, yeah, so we're gonna get into talking about Loki. So we'll give the recap. So uh, episode one of the show, it pretty much drops us in like right at the exact point where this whole series starts because for those of you who might not remember, essentially the whole reason this is happening in the MCU in the timeline is because when the Avengers went back in time to get the Infinity Stones in Avengers Endgame, they fucked up like they usually do, which is kind of the charm of the Avengers in a way, and that created an opportunity for 2012 Loki post the events of the original Avengers movie to grab the Tesseract and disappear with it. So we find out that he disappears into a desert. So yeah, that was a good destination, I guess. So he quickly gets apprehended by the TVA, which was what again? I forget.
Oh God.
Time Variance
Tot
Association or
maybe.
something
Wow.
like that. Yeah, I was thought I was throwing you a softball there, but apparently not.
No. No.
Because I didn't even fully remember. It's Time Variance Association, I think, or something like that. Whatever, it doesn't matter. So they get him, and then we pretty much spend the entire first half of the first episode like world building essentially. So they explain what the TVA is, what it does. It's basically this organization that oversees the flow of time, and if anything happens that's not supposed to happen, they erase it essentially. So
Hmm.
they get Loki, and they're gonna erase him too. But then he is saved by none other than Agent Owen Wilson. Uh,
Mobius.
yeah, that guy. So good to see Owen Wilson doing stuff, you know. Yeah, but anyway, so they kind of do more world building, and they do more, I guess, character building with Loki, and they kind of like have this like the pretty much the other half of the episode is like character building for Loki, and it's kind of like they wanted to catch him up with like the Loki that we all know, essentially, right? So they have this conveniently placed TV monitor where they can kind of cycle through, and then Loki kind of escapes, and they find the drawer of Infinity Stones, which is a little bit of a slap in the face to
I didn't
the
mind
Infinity
that.
Stones. Yeah, I mean it was a gag, which was funny, but at the same time, it's like okay, these are like these were supposed to be the greatest power in the universe, and now they're in a desk drawer in some office, which is whatever. Although somebody pointed out, I guess this is a good time to mention this. Somebody pointed out that there was no Mind Stone in that drawer.
I did see that
And
myself.
I didn't catch that at first, and then when I went back, I was like, "Oh yeah, that's right." So there's a lot of fan speculation as to why that could be, but they think that that's on purpose because there was like a bunch of like time stones and soul stones and
Uh huh.
everything else, but there was no mind stone, which I find kind of interesting. Um, who
Because it
knows?
was inside of Loki's scepter, right?
Yes, that was where
I
the
guess.
the mind stone initially came
Yeah.
from. So yeah, so I don't know what that actually will mean, if it'll mean anything. But I feel like, every in Marvel, everything happens for a reason in the MCU, right? So
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
have to believe that there is a reason why there was no Mind Stone in that drawer, right? So who knows what it is? I guess we'll find out later, hopefully. But anyway, so yeah, and they have like some slapstick comedy in there here and there, which is fine. But anyway, so then they spend the rest of the time when he comes back kind of catching this version of Loki up because, to follow with the timeline, this version of Loki hasn't experienced anything that the Loki we knew experienced past the events of the first Avengers movie. So that would be all the events of Thor Dark World, Thor Ragnarok, and then, of course, his death in the beginning of Infinity War. So they basically have this Loki watch what happens to him or what's supposed to happen to him for all the rest of his existence to kind of just catch him up, which is like, in a way, I understand why they did that, but in another way, that kind of bothered me a little bit because I was like, kind of trying to like cheat the system essentially, where it's like, okay, so this Loki technically isn't the other Loki, but he is, but he's not. So like, they're just, I don't know how you felt about that, but I felt it got a sensation they were just kind of trying to like cheat the system there to like bring him up to speed so they could like cram through like all his character building from the last three movies he was in, since this Loki didn't experience any of that.
I mean, I did feel like they did it to bring him up to speed, but I didn't think it was like to cram it. It was just like, oh, this is what, you weren't a total shitbag. You were actually, you had some good in you. You weren't, you had a, I mean, you died, but,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
had
yeah.
purpose. So I don't think it was, I mean, I didn't feel like it was just trying to cram
Well, I
all
guess it
of
felt a
his,
little forced was kind of what I was saying because
eh,
they wanted to like, and when I say, but I when I mean when I say cheat the system, I mean kind of like they like this Loki didn't experience any of that, but they wanted
yeah,
him to have experienced that, so they just had him watch it all on
yeah,
tape.
I
So it was
guess.
kind of like, yeah, but I guess it is what it is. So anyway, so that's pretty much the first episode. Oh, and they find out that they're trying to find stupid desktop. They're trying to find um, a different variant of him because everybody's he's a variant, and
Yeah.
I guess anybody who escapes the timeline and goes rogue is a variant or whatever. So buzzwords. So anyway, then the second episode is pretty much spent finding this other version of Loki. And when watching this, we kind of had the inkling that there was going to be something off here. Like we were kind of thinking it's just not just going to be like another Tom Hiddleston. Like there's going to be some kind of swerve. Like you were thinking. I know you
I didn't
said.
think it was going to be a Loki at all.
Right, yeah, that's what I was gonna say. You thought that it wasn't even gonna be a Loki; it was gonna be a switch or like a swerve, and it was a
Yeah,
swerve.
I thought she was going to be the enchantress,
Yeah,
cuz what I'd read was that her before, she got a name, it was Sylvie, and Sylvie became the second enchantress, and so that's what I figured, but no, they
yes.
actually went the Loki variant, which, got a little creepy, but whatever.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that for sure. Um, yeah, so that's pretty much the whole second episode. Is they're doing a lot of time hopping, and the Tom Hiddleston Loki figures out that anybody can hide in like an apocalyptic event or whatever to avoid detection by the TVA. Because if everything gets destroyed and everybody dies, then there's no record or remnants of it in the timeline and whatever. So, which is fine. It's kind of interesting
Mhm.
how they world build around all that. But anyway, so then they finally get her at the end of the second episode, and that's the reveal that it's a female version of Loki. Um, so and then they start calling her Sylvie, so as to not confuse the two, I'm sure, which is
Yeah.
fine. So yeah, then in the third episode, they get into a fight and they get stranded on whatever the heck Lumois one, whatever it was, doesn't matter, some planet that's gonna blow up, and they have to try and figure out how to get off it, and they can't. So that I guess pretty much takes up the entire third episode.
Until their Nexus event.
Yeah, I know I'm moving kind of quickly, but that I think that's the beginning of the fourth episode actually. So yeah, they
It end I thought I
yeah,
don't
because
know,
I think the
maybe.
third episode ends with because they're trying to get. So okay, I guess speaking of the third episode, this is one thing that didn't make sense to me a little bit. So it's an event where everybody dies and everything's destroyed, right? So they're
Yeah.
like racing to get to like the transport to leave the planet before it blows up or whatever, and it's like, but the transport never made it off the planet, and it's like, so why would you want to try to get on there? Because
Because I do remember they wanted to beat it there so they could.
they
They
could,
know it's supposed to blow up, so they're gonna like. They planned on finding how and trying to fix it and stop it from blowing up.
or they were trying to leave early. I think that was another
Yeah,
idea, is they were
but
trying to
of
get there
course,
early.
nothing ever works right.
Yeah, everything goes wrong, obviously. Yeah, so yeah, that brings us to the beginning of the fourth episode, which is like they kind of have like a creepy, their first of many awkward, creepy, semi-romantic interactions where
I guess I
there's
wouldn't call it creepy, but yes.
slightly yes and no, which yes, we'll talk about that more too. So um, yeah, so that happens, and that alerts the TVA that they're there, so they can pull them out and save them. Even though, like, at this point, now I didn't really think about this until right now, but that kind of didn't make sense to me too, because it's like, okay, they were trying to find them, right? But
Mhm.
if they would have just left them on that, they would have blown up, presumably, and that would have been the end of it. So why did
Mhm.
they feel the need to rescue them? I don't know, or I guess maybe it was,
Because they
yeah,
created their Nexus event, and so they noticed like, oh, something's wrong. Well, there they are. Let's figure out what they did. Why? How could they create a Nexus event on a planet that's already bound to be destroyed?
yes, that's
So I
what it
guess
was.
it's just they're curious. They want to know what the hell's going on.
Well, you know what they say about curiosity. It
Killed
killed.
the kitty.
Yeah, that's right. So speaking of that, getting into the fourth episode, so we do more, character building and all this with more specifically with the Tom Hiddleston Loki, and then he kind of, I think this is, so like when he gets like imprisoned and trapped or whatever in like his memories, and then he has to relive the memory of
I was so happy to see Lady Sif though.
yeah, I was gonna say, like, we haven't
I
seen her in a
missed
long time.
her.
She wasn't even in Ragnarok, I believe, right? She wasn't
No.
in that. Yeah, so because they brought back like the rest of Thor's married
Yeah, everybody
men,
but
and
her.
yeah, except her, and they all to get killed off by Hela, but they didn't bring her back for whatever reason. So yeah, she's back. So I guess maybe she'll be back in future projects related to the Thor characters. Who
Yeah, I
knows?
think she's gonna have something with Valkyrie, but anyway.
Possibly. We don't know, but yeah. So anyway, but that was, I guess, important in a way of like it was character building for Loki, because like it kind of like he's kind of like forced to confront the fact that he's like a douchebag essentially. He's
Mhm.
so, and like more because like he was already kind of done that, but like this was a more, I guess, forceful or meaningful way of doing it. So, yeah, so he has to do that, and then he kind of like wins Owen Wilson over to his side because he finds out from Sylvie, I guess, that like the TVA is basically a mirage, or that it's
Mhm.
whatever, and it's not real.
Everybody is a
Everybody,
variant.
exactly. So that brings us to the end of the fourth episode, where they come before the supposed timekeepers and find out that they're just fake robots or whatever, which is kind of another swerve. That's another thing that I guess I'll bring up now. Is this show felt like it had a lot of swerves in it, and I don't necessarily know that that was a good thing, but this is just another one of those swerves that they had. Is like, the timekeepers aren't real, so then it, obviously that's not really, so I want to call this like the Mandarin swerve essentially, because
Mhm.
if you remember back to Iron Man 3, of course that's what they did with the Mandarin, because in the source material in the comics, the Mandarin was a big baddie in the Iron Man universe, and then they made it in Iron Man 3 that it just wasn't even real, it was like fake. So they kind of did the same thing with the timekeepers. Is in the source material, the timekeepers were, a big thing, and they were, these all powerful beings. They kind of were what they said they were, and then they just swerved us and made them fake in the actual show, which is
Mhm.
whatever, I guess. But so then you have that moment. Oh yeah, I forgot. First you have the moment. Okay, in this, when Owen Wilson joins Loki's side, they prune him, which is what they call killing people, I guess, which I am amused by. I like that. I think that's funny. And but they use it to refer to like pruning the branches of the timeline to keep it all one
Yeah,
straight thing. But
which is very
what
clever.
they call pruning people, I don't know. I think that's I just thought that was amusing. But anyway, so Owen Wilson gets pruned, and then I'm like, oh man, Owen Wilson, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And then they do it to Loki at the end. I'm like, for a minute there, they kind of had me, and I was like, what the fuck just happened?
You
Like,
really think they were really?
well, yeah, because Loki's died. So he was like, I've died so many times it doesn't even matter anymore, and then he dies again. And I'm like, what the fuck? Like, because I thought until they did the end credit on that episode, what I thought they were gonna do was kind of like make that just be the end of him, and then they were just gonna focus
Focus
on the
on Sylvie.
Sylvie Loki, which I didn't care for because this was all supposed to be about more or less the redemption or the fleshing out more of the Tom Hiddleston Loki. So it's like like I said, they did have me there for a second, but then obviously at the end credits we find out that he's not dead, and then we find out that the magical prune stick doesn't actually kill anybody; it just sends you to like another realm
To
or
the
another
void.
whatever where then you'll die. Which I think that's kind of like I had mixed feelings about that whole thing because I was like, okay, I get why they did that and it worked on me. They got me. I'm not gonna lie, but at the same time, like that's it feels kind of like cheap in a way because it's like okay you're just like I don't know, an overwhelming sensation that I got from the first pretty much the entire season of Loki except the final episode of Loki was essentially just they're just keep on kicking the can down the road, right? Because it's like first it's like oh you find the variant, then it's like oh she's not the bad guy, find the timekeepers, and it's like oh the timekeepers are fake, so like who's doing this, and then it's like oh you die but you're not dead, and it's so it just felt like a lot of kicking the can down the road, you know
Yeah,
what I
pulling
mean?
back the curtain multiple times. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like curtain after curtain, I guess. But anyway, so then we go to the fifth episode, and we meet a whole bunch of different Loki variants, which is another kind of comic relief situation. So we get Black Loki, we get Old Loki, we get Young Loki, and we get
Kid
Crocodile
Loki.
Loki. Yes, so
And
Crocodile Loki was my
did
favorite, I
you
think.
notice Throg?
Throg.
When they're going down into their little hideout or whatever,
Right.
you see like this little frog jumping, trying to get Mew Mew. You know,
Oh,
Mjolnir.
getting Mjolnir. Yeah, getting the.
That's Throg. That is Frog Thor.
Oh yeah, I
Voiced
almost forgot about that.
by Chris Hemsworth.
Did he really voice that?
Yeah,
That's
just
awesome.
like these little squeaky grunt sounds, but it was Chris Hemsworth.
That's so funny. Yeah, I almost forgot about that, but yeah, that was funny because it seems like so. We'll talk about this when we do our opinions of the show as a whole, but like it seemed like a lot of stuff happened in Loki, but like not a lot of it mattered. So so yeah, that kind of just went in one eyeball and out the other, I guess for me. But anyway, it was funny. So yeah, and then Sylvie figures out, or she gets told by that bitch, the bitch I'm talking about, with the
Judge.
judge bitch with the curly hair. Yeah,
Oh my God, it starts with an R.
yeah, doesn't matter. Anyway,
Uh,
yeah, if you can think of it
Whatever.
later, you can call it out. But so yeah,
She's got a very powerful comic presence.
she
I'm mad I
does.
can't remember it.
We're not good with names here on the Captain's Table, though. That's the thing. If you're not,
I am,
well,
which is pissing me off.
I guess apparently not because you can't remember. So.
That's what I mean. Except, I ask me anything when we're not on this podcast. I'll remember every name.
You're
But the
getting
second I'm on here, it's like, bye.
stage fright Felt's wild when there's just you and me talking. Anywho, it's okay.
It still happens. It's a thing.
Yeah, I know. Don't worry about it. It's okay. So, um, yeah. So Sylvie prunes herself was the point I was getting to, and then so she can be reunited with Loki, which is oh yeah. I almost forgot in episode 4 I was going to mention the second creepy, almost sort of lovey moment between Loki and other Loki occurred right before
She
Tom
got pruned.
Hiddleston's Loki gets pruned. Yeah, so then she does it to herself, gets reunited. There's like the void, this giant beast that apparently kills everything, and then she's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna like enchant it and take control of it." I was like, "All right, sure, I guess." okay, you know.
I
So
mean, ambitions. Let her have her
I
ambitions.
guess, like, so yeah. Then they get the whole you know uh they get aided by the other versions of Loki till they get specifically old Loki definitely helps him out the most by dying to give them enough time to enchant the
Distracting the
beast
thing.
or whatever. Yeah, so which old Loki's
Which,
supposed
of
to be.
course, I can't remember the name of.
I don't know, but yeah, old Loki was comic accurate Loki, which I thought was kind of funny. There was a lot of funny stuff in that fifth episode. It didn't feel very important, but it was kind of funny. So anyway, yeah, and then that brings us finally to the last episode. So this is really where everything comes together. So this entire episode is pretty much like an explanation episode, more or less, of how and why everything of all the last episodes. Like I said, kicking the can down the road for 5 episodes leads to this episode. And I got to be honest, I was skeptical as to whether or not this would kind of tie everything up. And you know what? Once again, it did. It did. I'll say it. So they find what's past the giant monster that kills everything at the end of time, and that is none other than Jonathan Majors. So, um,
It, he doesn't have that name, though.
no,
It's
that's the
He
name of
Who
the actor. That's
Remains.
why I said.
Well,
That's why I
I'm just
said.
saying, it is He Who Remains.
Yes, they called him He Who Remains. So, yeah, so they find him, and then he spends an exorbitant amount of time explaining everything. So, he explains that pretty much everything that they were told up until this point, except the timekeeper's line, was true. So he explains it like, okay, because I don't know if you remember this, but in the beginning of the first episode, they in the intro, the Miss Minutes like intro video to the TVA, essentially, they actually explain the entire plot of the series, and that was something that I forgot about until the last episode, because again, like, it seems like a lot happened, but not a lot was worth remembering. So essentially he just reinforces that okay, there was once upon a time there was a great multiverse war, and he figured out how to solve it all by killing all the other universes, essentially, and just maintaining one universe, one timeline. And that's why he made the TVA and kills and anything that deviates from that one timeline. So very interesting, to say the least. And then he says that the end of time is apparently upon us, and that now he was able to evade, because like the whole time Sylvie's trying to kill him, because obviously
Mm-hmm.
she's mad because she was abducted as a kid, and life taken away from her and all that whole bit, standard.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so then they decide, they come to, there's only two options, essentially, because it's the end of they approach the end of time, essentially, and then it's like, okay, now you have two choices: either you take over for me, or you kill me and reactivate the multiverse, and we're gonna have wars. Because he says that there's you know the whole reason the multiverse war happened apparently was because of him, He Who Remains, because he and I got a little giddy. I'm not gonna lie, when he said this. He's like, I've been called many things, conqueror, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so yeah, essentially all the multiverse war was started by all the different variants of him throughout all the different universes that discovered all the other universes. So yeah, and this version of him is like probably like the best, like most good version of him, and that's why he figured out how to maintain everything in one timeline. So then we have the blowout between Loki and Sylvie, because Loki wants to save him, even though he's a prick who's made everybody's life miserable and killed everybody and done shitty things and whatever. But he sees the greater good in keeping him alive so that they don't like start the multiverse war all over again. And of
Mm-hmm.
course, Sylvie's just blinded by rage and wants to kill him. So I will say about this scene, initially when I saw this scene, I was thinking to myself, wait a second, why is it that obviously they're both Loki, they're both variants of Loki, but Loki is the god of mischief, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like, why would Loki, of all characters in the MCU, why would Loki want to preserve order in the universe or in the multiverse for that matter? You know what I mean? Like, that didn't really make sense to me. And then I thought about it a little more and I thought, you know what? This actually does make sense, and here's why. Because you have to remember this entire show, this entire journey leading up until this point has all been character development and character building for Loki. So
Hmm.
he's lived through not only technically because he's watched everything that happened to him in the Loki we knew up until dying by Thanos in the beginning of Infinity War, but in addition to that, he's also had all these experience and these revelations and these, everything that he's had within this show. So to me, this is like the, I guess, ultimate maturation of the character that you would say
Yeah,
to
he
the
grew
point.
up.
Yeah, that he now, exactly, now he's at the point where he, to use a wrestling pun, did a face turn essentially, and now he, like, because of all those experiences and all those, everything that he had to go through and live through, he now understands that being that way and doing those things is not right, like all the conversations with Owen Wilson and living through his memories and and whatever. He now has a different outlook on things as opposed to Sylvie, who has not had any of those experiences, any of that character building or progression. So she is doing what you would expect Loki to do, which is just wanting to kill the guy. So
Hmm.
I actually appreciated that scene a lot more thinking back on it than I even did initially when I watched it, because it actually does make a lot of sense. So, um, but yeah, so then of course they kind of fight, and then of course get, I guess, what you would say is the weirdest of all. Um, the interaction between the two of them, which is like now, you know what I'm talking about.
Uh-huh.
He,
I mean, it's not the weirdest thing Loki's ever done if you go and look at the comics, so it's whatever.
yes,
You know,
yes, that is
not the
true.
weirdest thing.
Right, but yeah, he kisses himself. Yep, or herself, or
Let him, let
themselves.
him, let him pleasure himself. It's a thing. Let
You
him love
had
himself.
you had to say it. You had to say it
I
like
did.
that, didn't you?
I did. I did.
uh,
I did.
well, thanks for that.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so they do that, and then again, actually, thinking back on it, she pulls a fast one on him and throws him through the portal to get rid of him temporarily.
Yep.
Thinking back on it, I actually appreciate that too more because she did what he would have done again. Like, it's really interesting in that final scene the more you think about it, because the more you think about it, she does everything that Loki would have done, like circa the original Thor
Yep.
movie, right? Like the first Avengers movie, or even
She's
possibly in
more
Thor Dark
Loki
World.
than Loki.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it. Yes. And so that's very interesting. Whereas Loki has evolved. Tom Hiddleston's
Hmm.
Loki has evolved, and now he sees a greater good, or he, understands that he has changed, So that's all very cool, and I appreciate that. So then, unfortunately, of course, to no one's surprise whatsoever, she kills, you
Wait,
know.
before, don't forget to mention the event where, nothing, he knows nothing beyond this point. What does that match up with?
I oh yeah, yeah, I was going to mention that after, but you might as well mention.
Oh,
So
well,
so at the point in time when there's like a loud boom that goes off or whatever, and that's at the point in time where time ends essentially, and now he, quote unquote, he who remains, knows nothing of what's going to happen next. So that, I'll let you say it because this is a big fan.
it matches up to when my girl becomes the Sorcerer Supreme.
You
Or
mean
no, stronger than the Sorcerer Supreme, excuse me.
your
But
girl
she
name,
becomes
insert
Scarlet
name.
Witch.
There you go, the
Wanda
Scarlet Witch.
becomes Scarlet Witch.
And not only,
Finally, she gets her name anyway.
yes, so that matches up with what happened in WandaVision. Yes, so that was interesting. That's more of a fan theory than 100% confirmed, but I could see
I
that.
mean, Marvel, nothing is coincidence.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right. So I think this is one of the more solid fan theories that yes, that coincides with her ascending to being the Scarlet Witch and at the end credits and all that stuff. So of WandaVision. So that's a nice crossover. So yes, that happened before the fight and the kiss and everything. So I might have
Yes.
glossed over that a little bit. Yes. So, um, but yes, then of course, because like I said, to no one's surprise, Sylvie kills him, and
Stabby stabs, yeah.
yes, starts the multiverse all over again.
Mhm.
So, which is confirmed by at the end, um, Loki goes up to Mobius Wilson, and he's like, "Who are you?" Like he doesn't know who he is. And the at the TVA, the statues of the timekeepers have been replaced with a statue of none other than He Who Remains, or a different variant of He Who Remains, which I've put off saying it long enough, so I'm gonna
You
say it.
say it. Say it.
Kang the Conqueror, the
There you go.
next Thanos level villain in the MCU. So, that brings us to the end of Loki. Now, thoughts on Loki. Prior to this final episode, I was pretty much ready to write the show off and just say, and I've kind of mentioned it a couple times here, saying it feels like a lot is happening, but not a lot that matters. I don't know if you got that same sensation out of the show, but that's kind of like up until the final episode, that's kind of how I was perceiving the show.
Fair enough.
Um,
Uh,
yeah,
I mean, I did like Loki, but it wasn't up to like WandaVision standards to me. It wasn't Falcon and the Winter Soldier to me. It was like, this is a setup.
yeah.
This is, it's setting up the multiverse. So I will admit I was on my phone a lot when watching it.
Fair enough. But the thing is, we didn't know that prior to the sixth
Yeah.
episode, so that's what made the payoff kind of worth it. Because
Mhm.
we're all like this whole time again, like it's just, not to keep coming back to this analogy, but it's just kicking the can down the road over and over again. And at some point, you're just like, where is this going? And we finally got there in the last episode, which kind of made it all worth it. So. Although I will say one of the negatives, because like okay, they now that Loki's over, we can say, okay, the greater purpose of Loki was to first and foremost introduce Kang the Conqueror again, as I mentioned, who is the next Thanos level villain in the MCU.
Worse than Thanos.
Yes, much worse than Thanos, much stronger than Thanos, actually. Um, and also to reactivate the multiverse, essentially, which is going to be big going forward in the MCU. So, the only negative to that, and I'll get it out of the way now, and then I'll talk more about the positive, is that it kind of undermines Loki, right? Because this was supposed to be Loki's show. Like this was Loki's time, as he said in the first episode to the
Mhm.
to the judge, and she's like, "No, you don't get time, or it's never going to be your time, or something." So I guess in that respect, it's kind of ironic the way that the show turned out, but yeah, so that was a little bit of a negative, I guess, but that negative is overshadowed, I think, by the positive, which is, again, Kang in the multiverse. So, um, yeah, I will say general comments first, because I guess I kind of asked you, but maybe not really. Overall, I did like Loki. Like I thought it was too much foot dragging, in my opinion. There was a lot of stuff that was happening that, again, like a lot of stuff happened, didn't feel like a lot of it was important. So that was a negative. There was really good humor in this show. I thought there was a lot of jokes and a lot of fan service that landed very well.
Yeah, it was nice.
Probably more so than either WandaVision or the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. I want to say there's probably more good humor in this show. So I
Oh,
appreciated
humor
that.
definitely, more humor.
Yeah, I appreciated that a lot. Another negative, I guess I would say, is there wasn't a lot of action in this show if you really think about it, because like
That didn't bother me.
I mean, it was a little bit of a change of pace. Marvel's doing different things. Like, obviously, WandaVision kind of set the tone for the beginning of Stage 5 with some really weird shit, with the way that what they were doing with the,
Yeah. And hers
obviously,
wasn't actiony until
toward the end.
the third last episode.
Yeah, exactly. So, and then Falcon and the Winter Soldier had a lot more action in it. But Loki didn't have much outside of like Loki fighting Sylvie a few times, and a few brief fights with random goons here and there, either
An explosive planet.
but yeah, stuff like that. There really wasn't a ton of action, and I could have dealt with more action. Like I like good storytelling, probably more than the next guy. but I could definitely have dealt with more action in this show. But yeah, so that's a little bit of a negative for me. Overall, I think the payoff of this show is very significant and very important for a lot of different reasons, actually. So, the payoff of this show is obviously Kang in the multiverse. So, a little bit of a quick and dirty introduction to Kang for those of you who don't know. So, Kang the Conqueror, aka Nathaniel Richards, I believe,
Hmm.
was a 31st century scientist and also a direct descendant of Reed Richards, aka Mr. Fantastic of the Fantastic Four, which I'm sure is coming soon
Yeah,
since,
we need a good Fantastic Four. I mean,
yeah,
I love
God.
the originals, obviously. Well, not the originals, but you know.
We haven't had a good Fantastic Four movie since like when did the
So
2005 or 6
2000
or
something, yeah.
yeah, mid 2000s with the original Fantastic Four, because the sequel to that, The Rise of the Silver Surfer, was
Oh,
garbage, and then the Fantastic Four reboot in like 2016 or 17 was also garbage. So yeah, we haven't had a good Fantastic Four movie in a while. So I mean, I have complete faith that Disney's
now that
Marvel
it's in
will do it.
Marvel's hands.
Yes, now that it's in the right hands, they'll be fine. I'm not worried about it.
Yeah.
But I digress. So back to Kang. So he's a scientist, and essentially he's just a guy. That's the thing. So he's just a guy. He's a human. He has no supernatural powers, but his two greatest powers, even though he has no powers physically, but his two greatest powers are time travel
I
and
would say his greatest weapons.
weapons. Yes, good point. His greatest weapons are time travel and technology. So he's pretty much a master of time travel. He can go anywhere in time he wants. He can get anything he wants out of time, so he can travel to whatever time period he wants, get weapons, get armies, whatever. He also has technology that essentially makes him invulnerable, because again, he's futuristic from the 31st century. So those are really his greatest weapons that he uses. And these actually make him in the source material a greater threat than Thanos, which is good because obviously with the law of escalation, or a law of escalating stakes, you really need, big picture wise, you need to have that, because it's nice to not have as I mentioned before, it's nice to not have every battle for the fate of the universe. Obviously, you can't have every movie and show be about the fate of the universe, but at the same time, when it comes time for the big guns, when it comes time for the Avengers movies, whatever the case may be, um, we need that kind of villain. And that's
Hmm.
something else that I want to mention, and now seems like a good time to mention it. So, ever since Avengers Endgame, it feels like, or it has felt like, and tell me if you felt this way too, the MCU has felt a little bit hollow, honestly, without Thanos. Has it? Hasn't it? What do you think?
Uh, I wouldn't say it felt hollow. It just feels like we're back at the beginning
Okay, fair enough.
because we didn't really know about Thanos um until the first Avengers movie, right? You
Right,
got a lot of setup movies and then you find out about Thanos. So it's
right,
you're at the beginning again. So you're just revamping and restarting. And
right.
then oh, now we have our villain. Now we know what the end game is going to be.
Ha, pun intended.
So it didn't feel hollow to me. It just felt like a restart.
Well, okay, here's my logic. I'm gonna explain it. So so far there have been generally two. I know technically there have been four phases of the MCU, um,
Hmm.
but in
We're
my
in phase
opinion,
4 now. No.
right.
Yeah.
Well, phase five, I think, but whatever.
No,
Maybe it's
I don't
four,
know.
maybe it's five. I don't know. Who's
I
counting?
think Black Widow was supposed to be the first phase 4.
I don't know. I
Or
thought
was
it
it
was.
the last Spider-Man movie?
I'm pretty sure that Spider-Man Far From Home was the first,
Okay, yeah,
or
no,
was the
it was phase
last.
5.
Yeah, it
Wait.
was the last thing of the Infinity Saga slash Phase Four, and technically
Yeah, okay.
WandaVision.
Sorry, I just looked
Yeah,
at my DVD cases. It is the start of phase 4.
you got to start learning to trust me more. I do know what I'm talking about
Sorry.
sometimes. Anyway, so the thing is, here's the thing. I in my mind, I basically split the MCU into two phases essentially, and that is, or two eras, I guess you would say. There was the pre-Thanos era and the Thanos era essentially of the
Mhm.
MCU. So the MCU from the original Iron Man movie in 2008 up to the original Avengers movie in 2012, that was the introductory phase of the MCU essentially. So they're doing origin stories for their big heroes, their world building, all that stuff. That's
Yep.
the first era of Marvel essentially of MCU. Then you get to 2012, they introduced Thanos in the Avengers movie. So from that point, from 2012 all the way up until 2019, over a dozen movies at that point in time. That is the Thanos era of the MCU, essentially, where Thanos,
Yeah.
like, no matter what's going on, no matter what you're doing or watching,
You
no
know
matter,
Thanos is in the
you
background.
know Thanos is the ultimate end game, pun
Yep.
intended this time. He's the big threat lurking in the background and what everything's building up to. So that it's cool because it's like you can appreciate the movies and the characters and everything that's happening in the here and now, but then after the fact, you also know what the universe is building toward. And
Mhm.
when they came to that resolution in Avengers Endgame, getting rid of Thanos and setting everything right, what's next? That's the question. So for almost 2 years, actually, for pretty much exactly 2 years between, over 2 years actually, between when Avengers Endgame came out and when the final episode of Loki came out, in that 2 year time period, to me it felt like Marvel was slightly aimless, and here's why. Because you don't know what's going to happen next. You don't know, like, there's a big bad guy in the background trying to, manipulate everything or do anything. And not only that, but they've already introduced the overwhelming majority of the characters or important characters in Marvel at this point, right? So it's like, even though there's been new projects, it's like, okay, let me break it down like this. Let's think about what all the product we've gotten since Avengers Endgame. So the first thing we got after Avengers Endgame was Spider-Man Far From Home. Nice ride,
Mhm.
great movie, loved it, but um it it didn't feel like it was building toward anything bigger, really, because it was a great movie. It was what it was. It was a good way to come back down to earth after the grandeur of Endgame and to de-escalate the stakes. I love the movie, but again, it doesn't feel like it's really working toward anything or what the ultimate
No,
goal
I feel
is.
like it belonged at the very end of phase 3, not the beginning of phase 4, because it's dealing with the aftermath
I'm pretty
of.
sure it was at the end of the phase. It
No,
was.
it's the very first movie, the
Oh, they
beginning
count
of
that
phase
as the
4.
beginning of the
Yeah.
next. Okay, gotcha. Okay, that's fine. So right. So, but regardless of that, it did. There's nothing greater afoot. Essentially, you
No.
understand what I mean? Like, it doesn't feel like
Yeah.
there's anything greater afoot. Then we get WandaVision. We get a big gap because of
COVID.
the COVID pandemic, world circumstances, lockdowns,
Yeah,
all
because
the
we were
terrible
supposed to get
stuff.
Black Widow last year.
Yeah, Black Widow was delayed for well over a year, which was unfortunate. But yeah, so yeah, big gap between Spider-Man Far From Home and the next Marvel we got was WandaVision, I believe, all the way at the end of 2020.
We were
Um,
supposed to get these shows last year too.
yeah, we were supposed to get well, yeah, we were supposed to get all this
At
stuff a
least
lot sooner, but
WandaVision and Falcon
yeah,
and the Winter Soldier were supposed to come out last year, the end of last year.
right, and they got delayed as well. So,
Yeah.
but my point is, going to WandaVision, it's like, okay, WandaVision was a nice ride. It was interesting. It was a change of pace. It was good, but again, didn't really feel like there was a big ultimate goal at the end, so it felt hollowed knowing that, like,
No.
what do you mean no?
No, it's set
That
up part of the multiverse.
Well, now you know that, but like you didn't know that at the time. That's what I'm saying. Like imagine,
Whatever.
I'm trying to take you on a journey here. So just suspend what we know now, and then just think back to what you knew when these shows were new. Essentially, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm asking. So at the time it was like it did, like, obviously we knew they're trying to like build up Wanda and she becomes a Scarlet Witch and all that. That's great. But again, you don't know, like, there's a lot of uncertainty. You don't know what's happening in the background. You don't feel a threat of like an impending big baddie in the background like you did with Thanos for the past 7+ years. So then we have Falcon and the Winter Soldier, kind of the same thing. It's like, okay, it's all well and good for the here and now. Obviously, they're trying to drop hints and set up toward, the young Avengers, but it's like, again, where's the big baddie in the background? Like, that's what I'm getting at. Is it just felt hollow without knowing that there's a big bad guy in the background. That's what everything is building toward. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, and then finally in Loki, we get that at the end of Loki. We get that with Kang. So it's like, now I'm happy. Like, now I feel better and happier knowing that that's what the goal is here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm happy that now that I have that again, because like I said, the hollowness, to I guess come back to that, it wasn't overwhelming, and it wasn't like I didn't enjoy any of these projects. Trust me, I did. I liked everything. I liked Far From Home, I liked WandaVision, I liked Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and I liked Loki too. But it was missing something, I think, and that something was Kang. And now that Kang is here, I'm very happy about it. So, but yeah, that kind of sums that up. But I'd love to get your take also on Loki. If you have any general thoughts that you want to make about the show, or anything else that you want to bring up there, Felts, that maybe we didn't touch on as far as something you found cool or interesting that happened during the show.
Uh, like I said earlier, I did like Loki.
Yeah,
It just wasn't capturing me as much as I hoped it would until the final. Like, I liked the second last episode. I liked the Void. I thought that
yeah,
was interesting. I liked all the other versions of Loki, like President Loki, and then getting his hand bit off by Crocodile Loki. But
yeah. That was some funny
uh,
stuff.
it just it just didn't capture me as much as the other two did. Not Don't get me wrong, I loved the storyline. I love Loki. It did feel lackluster.
Yeah,
And it was probably because it just felt like you said kicking the can.
yes, yeah,
But other than
yes.
that, it was good.
Fair enough.
It was
So,
entertaining enough.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I think so. So another, I guess, point I want to bring up, that's like, I guess, side note. Um, it kind of, like, one thing that I thought about the show that kind of gave me mixed feelings about it was the whole, like, Loki's. So prior to the Loki series, right? It felt like Loki's story had already been told and it was already done with everything that happened in the movies, because you had Loki play an integral part of all three Thor movies and obviously the first Avengers movie. So that's four movies that Loki was a huge, huge part of, that a lot happened with him. And then, of course, his fifth movie, which was Endgame, or not, I'm sorry, not Endgame, Infinity War, where he dies in the opening scene. Um, so it felt like his character had been completed at that point. You know what I mean? So,
Hmm.
doing a series on Loki felt a little strange, because it was like, okay, we're already done with this character. Like, that's how I felt. Like, I did. So, like, with the other two Marvel Disney Plus shows, like WandaVision, it was like, okay, and then Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Like, these are characters that have been kind of in the shadows in the MCU, so it's time for them to get the limelight. It's time for them to get, fleshed out and developed and grow and change and become like a more central piece of the MCU, which is cool. But but with Loki, I didn't have that feeling, because like, he already told his story. He's already gone. You know what I mean, kind of thing. Like, yes, I understand with Endgame what they did to make a loophole to bring him back, but it just felt kind of awkward to me. You know what I mean? Because, like, it felt like his story had already been told.
Fair enough, yeah.
So, so maybe that was part of the reason, and maybe you were feeling the same way, and not so many words, and maybe that's why both of us kind of had this sensation of with Loki, like, and then they made it worse by, not to beat a dead horse with the same, analogy of kicking the can down the road, essentially, because they were doing that so much in the whole show, basically, up until the last episode. So, I think that didn't help with the fact that we're like, okay, like, why did you think that we needed a Loki series? But ironically enough, Loki's getting a second season, so I guess we're still not done. You know what I mean?
Which I'm
So,
I'm fine with.
yeah, no. After the end of this one, I'm totally fine with that too.
We're
Um,
supposed to get Loki also in Doctor Strange,
yeah,
so we might even get Loki back.
back
You
in
know.
the universe. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd be happy about that because like so a couple of takeaways from Loki. And actually one more before I do a takeaway about what I want to see in the future. Because I do want to do that. Um, I guess two unanswered questions, but really more one that I have is after Sylvie kills He Who Remains, which is a variant of Kang the Conqueror, obviously. Um, why is Tom Hiddleston's Loki not altered like everything else is? You know what I mean? Like, why does he remember everything that happened? Like he goes to Agent Mobius slash Owen Wilson, and he has no recollection of anything that happened prior. You know, so why does Loki remember everything? You know what I mean?
Maybe
Why wasn't he reset?
because
Yeah,
maybe because a variant of him is stuck, like, where they were in the void.
I mean that's
Because all their other variants are dead, right?
yeah, presumably.
Are they? No.
No, they didn't
I
all
don't
die.
know.
Only old Loki died in the actual show. Like the
No,
rest
I
of
don't
them
mean
are
that.
still.
I'm getting messed up. I'm thinking of everybody in the TVA, all of their variants, but no,
Yeah,
all of their variants would be affected by all the changes, but
yeah.
because, Sylvie's the one that killed He Who Remains and she's stuck there, maybe it just didn't affect Loki because she's there. I don't know.
Yeah, see that I mean I don't mean to put you down, but that seems like a pretty flimsy argument.
I
But
agree.
you
I
know,
agree.
the point I'm driving at here is that's a pretty big unanswered question of like why didn't he get reset along with everybody else? So I'd be interested to see how they answer that. Um, my other question is what happened to Sylvia, obviously, but that's obviously not meant
She's
to be.
stuck there.
Yeah, well, maybe.
Well, for now, she's stuck there.
That could be true. Yeah, because yeah, it could be very true. So yeah, but yeah, that's those are really the unanswered questions I have from Loki. Well, actually, there's another big unanswered question, which obviously I know we shouldn't get an answer because the next several projects might answer it. Is that what does this mean for the MCU going forward? Is for like is a lot of or everything else going to get reset? You know what I mean? Like what's going to happen? Obviously, I know we're not supposed to know that yet because that's going to be
Hmm.
answered. But yeah. So as far as the looking forward, as I mentioned, the one thing that I really want to see, and I just saw memes of this over the last several days, so this made me think of it even more. After the events of Loki, one thing that I really, and this isn't from like a logical standpoint, this is from an emotional standpoint. One thing that I really want to see now is the Loki and Thor reunion because I think that would be just an
Yeah, that'd be great.
incredible moment after everything that you've gone through with Loki and like you see the character building. And I was, that kind of reminded me that I was actually kind of disappointed in the beginning of Infinity War when they just killed Loki like a sack of shit, like because I was excited to see kind of like Thor and Loki like together like they always
Yeah,
wanted
like
to be.
actually team up.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was kind of excited about that, and then, but that disappointment was overshadowed by all the other greatness of Infinity War. But now that I'm like
Mhm.
brought back to it, I'm kind of like, that's kind of shitty. Like I wanted to see like Loki and Thor together. So like that's a
I'm sure
moment.
we'll get it now.
I really hope so. I mean, we don't know what's going to happen in the future, but I definitely would hope and assume that that's going to happen at some point. So um, but yeah, so that's one thing I really want to see in the future. Obviously, it goes without saying, but I really want to see what they're going to do with Kang going forward, and also how what happens at the end of Loki kind of affects um, the timeline as we know it, right? Because the timeline as we know it just changed essentially with like
Mhm.
everything that's happened in the MCU is could kind of be up in the air at this point. So that kind of has created an intrigue for me that honestly I haven't felt since Endgame, to be honest with you. So that's another big thing for me is now I have a greater intrigue towards the future of Marvel and of the MCU than I had since Endgame. So I don't know if you have anything that you're looking forward to, or if you agree or disagree with any of that stuff.
No, I'm just ready. I'm just ready for more Marvel.
Mm. Well, speaking of that, yeah, we're gonna get quite a bit more Marvel after that big break that we had in between. Like pretty much all of like middle of 2019 when Spider-Man: Far From Home came out until the end of 2020 when WandaVision came out. There was a pretty big drought of Marvel content, but we're back now in a full swing, I think, because there's a lot of stuff coming up. So obviously, we have Black Widow released a while, like
2 weeks
several
ago.
weeks ago. Yeah, well, at the time that this gets posted, it'll
Well,
probably be
yeah,
more. But yeah, so Black Widow's out. I haven't seen it yet. You have.
I have.
I don't know if I'll talk about it or not on a podcast. Probably not individually, but we'll see what happens. So yeah, that's out. Then we have in about a month or two, I want to say, like maybe a month and a half in
I'm
September.
not sure the date.
Yeah, I don't know the exact date, but coming in September, we have Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. So that's going to be kind of interesting. It's the first new character, I think, in a little while, in a couple of years
Yeah.
that they've introduced into the MCU, Shang-Chi. So I don't know much about Shang-Chi, but I'm kind of interested to find out. I saw the trailers, I was kind of pumped. Um, Speaking about that a little bit, you saw the trailer, I assume, yes,
Oh yeah.
and the ending with Abomination.
Oh yeah. That's I'd like the
That has me
answer to
very
that
that has me very intrigued because
because Wong is fighting
yes,
the
Wong
Abomination.
as well. Yeah, so that has me very intrigued because it's like you
What's
know,
happening here?
yeah, what's going on right now is not first and foremost, yes, but also we haven't seen Abomination since 2008 in the Ed Norton Hulk movie, right? So like,
Which I never saw.
yeah, well, I've it's been a while, so I am like really shocked in a way that they brought him back, but like yeah, I'm interested to see where they go with that. So yeah, I'm interested to know about Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi's not like a character that's super well known or featured in Marvel, I don't think. So it'll be interesting to see what they do with them. Um, but anyway, looking forward to that. Then in November at some point, so that's a few months away. Not sure the date. Once again, we have the Eternals coming out. So that's
I think
another.
Hawkeye's also in November.
Is it okay? I didn't know
I
that
think
Hawkeye
so.
was. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I
So
just recently got a date, and I think it was November. I could be wrong,
okay.
but
Well, tentatively or roughly, yeah, we'll go with that. Yeah, so we're getting the Eternals, which is going to be interesting, I think, because that's I'm not 100%. The Eternals is something else that's a little lesser known Marvel than what we've been seeing so far. So yeah, I'm interested to see what they do with that as well. I don't know much about the Eternals either, so
no, I
I'm
don't either.
interested to see where they go with that. And then Hawkeye, I'm very interested to see where they go with Hawkeye actually, because his own Disney Plus show.
I
Um,
was just about to say something, and I
but
I can't say it because it's gonna spoil something. So I'm gonna keep my mouth shut.
wait, what would it?
Something happens in Black Widow.
Oh, okay,
Let's
gotcha.
put it
Yeah, don't
that.
spoil Black Widow because I haven't seen it yet.
No,
So
so
yeah,
I was like, oh,
thanks,
never mind.
thanks for that. So appreciate it. So yeah, so yeah, that like I said, I'm interested to see where they go with Hawkeye because Hawkeye is the last character after the Black Widow movie. Hawkeye is the last character that hasn't had his own time to
Uh,
shine, I guess, of the original Avengers anyway. So
yeah. If unless you want, we're also getting She-Hulk too.
yeah, but
She's
that's
not the
not for
original
a while,
Avenger.
I think, right? That's either
I
2022 or 2023, I think.
I don't know. I think they're starting to film it now,
Yeah,
but
so that's I wasn't gonna go that far into the future. I was
oh
kind of going in
god.
chronological order. So yeah, we got that coming up. So obviously after Hawkeye in December, I believe we have Spider-Man: No Way Home
Yes.
yeah, which actually I gotta say I'm very. There's been so many rumors about what this movie is, and there's
Do
virtually
you think we're getting
the Spider
the
Verse.
multiple Spider-Mans or
It
the Spider-Verse?
really,
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, after Loki, especially, like it really feels like that's where they're leaning. So
Right?
yeah, like if they're setting us up for a Spider Verse like crossover where we get Garfield and more importantly Maguire, uh, Toby
I
Maguire,
mean, Garfield.
Tobey
Garfield was
Maguire.
very, adamant on,
He's
he never got called, and then the one of his responses was like, "Really?" you're gonna say that. So it's like people are like, we don't believe you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so okay, I have to tangent 1 second about that. So it's like these reporters are asking these questions to these actors that are supposed to be sworn to secrecy about like
Hmm.
big stuff like that, and it's like, what do you think they're gonna say? You know, like if you walk up to Toby Maguire, if you can find him these days, you know, and you're like, hey Toby, are you coming back for Spider-Man No Way Home? What do you think he's gonna say? Yes, you know,
I know.
like what? Like, yeah, I'm gonna blow the entire plot and plot twist of this movie that hasn't even come out, but we don't even have a trailer for Spider-Man No Way Home yet, you know, and it's like, yeah, he's totally just gonna blow the lid on that right now. So of course he's gonna. If the answer is yes, he's gonna say no. If the answer is no, he's gonna say no. So there's no point in even asking him the question. Is
No,
my
I
point.
know. Garfield, I'm trying to remember what it was. His his first set of responses were definitely like they actually sounded like no.
Mm,
And then he's like, "Oh, you know, well, I haven't even gotten the call yet."
yeah.
And that's the signal where it's like you're bullshitting.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say he could just be kind of like
You're
playing it.
bullshitting.
Yeah, he could just be trying to play it coy, but you know, I mean, I would
That's
like to
what
see that.
sorry, that's what Tatiana Maslany said when uh people found out that she was going to be She-Hulk and it hadn't been released yet. She was like, "Oh, I never got the call." Please.
That's funny. Yeah, that's got to be on purpose, I think. Then so yeah, I'm interested to see. So that'll take us to the end of this year, and then there's a whole bunch of stuff on the docket that we can't even get into as far as the future goes, because we have, like you said, there's some point there's going to be She-Hulk, there's going to be Guardians Volume 3, there's going to be Thor: Love and Thunder, which is probably the only project I'm not looking forward to because Chris Hemsworth is Thor and Natalie Portman can suck it. So yeah, so I'm not. But other than that, I'm looking forward to pretty much everything that they have on tap. There's a bunch of movies, a bunch of Disney Plus shows. Am I forgetting any? I'm sure I'm forgetting some stuff, but and there's cartoons too as
Oh
well.
yeah, what if?
Is that out already, or is that coming out?
No,
You
it's
think?
coming. I think it's coming before Hawkeye, but
Okay.
also don't quote me on that
No, I think you're right. I think What If is good,
because
but
it has a
that's
trailer. Hawkeye doesn't have anything
yeah,
yet.
What If has a trailer, and I think that's coming. Yeah, Hawkeye doesn't have a trailer. We have trailers for Shang-Chi, What If, and the
Mhm.
Eternals, but we don't have trailers for Hawkeye or Far From Home, or not Far From Home, No Way
No
Home,
Way Home.
which is going to be that will take us to the end of this year, which is and then like I said, there's a whole bunch of stuff after that too.
Yeah.
But yeah, so but I'm very interested to see all those. I mean, I probably won't watch What If, to be honest, because
Oh, I will. I'm
I know
excited.
you will, but I've never been like and I've said this many times. I've never been like Marvel animation is okay. Like I've never been the biggest fan of Marvel's animated projects. I know everybody will probably think, oh well, the Spider Verse, Miles Morales, all that stuff, which is all
Which
well
was
and good.
really good.
I never watched it. I have no doubt.
Really?
I have yes, really. I have no doubt that it's very good. Maybe I'll watch it someday. I don't know, but I've just like I don't know, like modern like superhero animation. It's just like I'm not super inclined to watch it just because I like the live action stuff better. So I'll watch every live
Fair
action
enough.
show, every movie, but I don't know. I probably won't watch the anime. Maybe I will, but probably not.
The
So,
only reason I should say you should watch it
mm.
is because of Chadwick.
Yeah,
He's
that's right. He,
voicing
yep,
Black Panther. Well, not Black Panther, excuse me, but he's voicing T'Challa in it.
yes,
So
yes, yes. Who's in What If, not the Black Panther. So if you want to
no,
find out more about that, go watch What If when it comes out. But
yeah, or watch the
um,
trailer. 'Cause it's in the trailer.
oh, that too. Yeah, she probably, which people have probably already seen anyway. But yeah,
Yeah.
so I guess the moral of the story is there's a lot more to come. There, like I said, we had a little bit of a drought there. 2020 was a drought for Marvel, unfortunately, but we're getting back into the swing of things with a lot of new content. And yeah, I think a lot of it we will cover here on the Captain's Table in one form or another. So. But yeah, I think that pretty well sums up anything. Do you have anything else you want to add about anything, either Loki or Marvel related, Felts?
Nope.
Alrighty, so I think that'll do it. So that's it. Thanks for watching again, everybody. Hope you all enjoyed. Please hit that like button, leave a comment, subscribe, share the video if you did enjoy, and stay tuned for more new videos in the future. I'd like to thank Feltz Wild for joining me once again to discuss primarily Loki, but also all things Marvel. So thank you, Feltz.
Thanks for having me.
No problem. And I'm sure, will be back talking about more Marvel at some point in the future. So that's it, and we'll see you next time.